Boom, we're live, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today. A very exciting time in the markets. I guess something we could have foreseen coming, that even the thought of a global pandemic would likely strike fear into the hearts of many. It is a very unknown circumstance. There are a lot of unknowns in life, and with that, this is one of the rather better known unknowns, if that makes sense, that we had on our radar in terms of a black swan being able to fall down on these markets and really push us over the edge into these negative terms. So we've seen a massive drop in the stock market and a Bitcoin as well. And this is something we had said just last week that we thought would be very likely, that in the event of a crash, is that this would not bode well for an asset like Bitcoin. We at that point decided, I know we'll get to this part here just shortly, but I had suggested that the best thing to do is to be investigating hedges against Bitcoin's volatility to the downside, with using leverage trading as at least to the very minimum to protect the assets that you had. I went and did something very stupid and the opposite of that, and I actually went long on something else. Just for fun, and then the trade didn't work out well. So also be sure to very, very, very seldomly change your trading strategy when you've built something up. So I'm going to take a look here at Bitcoin, S&P 500, and the rest of the assets that we're interested in, at least in terms of identifying where we think the market is at, and then where we think the market is going to go. We did get some messages come in this morning from friends in China, so I will really lay at least the sentiment of that information and go over some of the other sentiments of COVID-19 that I think will bring us, at least in the interim, back into an upward swing over the next few months. But again, on the long term, we're still dealing with what could be a global pandemic for years to come. So know that the volatility in these trading markets is not going to go away anytime soon. So with that in mind, we've got Bitcoin open first here. Obviously, if we roll out to the 45-minute or the 1-hour chart, we see this, guys, in the trading family, the Bear Den, we have been huge fans of wedges. There seem to be a fairly strong signal, and they're more clearly defined they are as a wedge itself, without maybe skewing itself over into looking like a descending triangle or an ascending triangle. Again, you have falling wedges and rising wedges. So if we go to the 4-hour on Bitcoin, we saw this rising wedge here, a breakdown of that wedge, another rising wedge, and then another breakdown. Again, the breakdown here was statistically larger than normal for a wedge of this size. But I think what we're seeing is there was another pattern overlaying here, which was also a head and shoulders. So we've been watching this in the background with the Bear family. You guys have all do a great job keeping your eyes and trading on them. I'm so grateful to have such a strong community of people. So here is the one way to see the head and the shoulders. Although you could have even actually moved the shoulders up higher too, like this, and this and moved your bottom line up to match that. I didn't draw that properly, but there are a few ways to look at these, and I'm just getting into a bit more of the candlestick reading in terms of the Steve Neeson book that everyone, a lot of you guys might have read already. So trading these Buddha patterns or these head and shoulder patterns, I guess I prefer to call them a Buddha pattern. Looks kind of like of a Buddha with the legs crossed and the shoulders up here. Anyways, these are frequently bearish patterns, but again, we also had the smaller these rising wedges, which are also bearish patterns. The falling wedges are bullish patterns, and we've seen breakouts with those quite frequently. And I think it's important to build that, in terms of trading and taking cautious moves during these markets. It's about having a toolkit that's broad and sharp, so that you can cut your way through a lot of the market noise to find the signal that you're looking for. Not the signal that you're looking for, but the signal that the market is providing. You don't want to go into it with an echo bias chamber and find what you're looking for. The market's giving us the signal. It's telling us what it thinks it's going to do based off the information that thousands upon millions of traders are giving it, right? So the markets are giving us a level of, let's say, prophetic vision to what it's doing, because there's a lot of people that are making bets, and because of that we can kind of guess where the markets are going to go with some level of accuracy, especially with particular patterns. The rising and falling wedges, especially when they're really beautifully defined like this on Bitcoin, have pretty much played out every time. So this looks like we're going to invalidate the bull flag, although we have not seen that yet. So for those of you that have been trading Bitcoin with us for a while, here, we thought we have been watching this bull flag, not a falling wedge, another bullish indicator, but usually much bigger. Down here, we have been following it all the way since $13,000 back there in July. Again, we saw you could have looked at it as a descending wedge too here. I mean, I'm not going to argue against that. There's some of us that were looking at it more like a wedge than a flag. But I from back here assumed that it would turn into a flag. Anyways, not always good to assume in markets. It's best to kind of play as they present themselves. So once we hit this bottom and we saw a breakout, we got super excited because we thought we would be continuing this bullish transition. Now, what the downside became is the S&P 500 and the rest of the markets in a global pandemic changed the fundamentals, and technical analysis then starts to go a little bit more, let's say, out the window. You need to start relying on the fundamental news that is coming out. So some of the fundamentals that we saw come out over the weekend for COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2, the name of the virus, and then COVID-19, the name of the disease that you get from the viruses. I fucking cough my lungs out here. Pretty ridiculous. Is important because that scares a lot of people. But also, we're just having a great conversation with a friend of mine. We'll get into the S&P 500 here from a few more standpoints. But one of the things I wanted to point out was that I think now that we have fairly statistically strong data that most people under 50 are going to be fine. I think a lot of the older people who have children are worried, but not as worried as they were before when we didn't have all these, like when we had more unknowns, we could say. But now that the death rate is seeming to stabilize, where most of the people under 50 don't die, we'll be fine. I think a lot of the parents are starting to relax. I think that they often care more about their family, especially their children, than they do themselves. And that's a very, say, cordial and romantic concept, but it is one that's stayed very strong in parental life throughout every species. That maternal instinct is very strong. So I think as that data comes in, we'll likely see a rebound in the market. Today, I think, is an ultimate fear time. Here, for those of you that don't know, we did hit what's known as a circuit breaker this morning from the Vanguard, which is just for the, again, we'll go over the circuit breakers. Points represent the thresholds at which trading halting market worldwide for a single day on the S&P 500. So trading for 50 minutes will stop if the drop occurs before 3:25 p.m. at 7%. And just as we saw in Bitcoin, that drop occurred in the S&P 500 in a matter of minutes. We did see a quick recoil from the markets back up afterwards. Here you see this big gap between the futures market and where we opened trading this morning. Again, with a lot of the sales had already taken place. Probably over the weekend, and the open of the futures market, which I believe is 12 hours ahead of the market itself. So we saw a big futures market sell-off last night as well. The drop in crude oil, again, these are other indicators that we are hitting fearful market sentiment lows, at least for now. If we go back to this Vanguard idea, we take a look at the different other halts. What's important to notice here is that this is supposed to help stem the emotional sentiment of everyone freaking out into total panic on a single day basis, which means that at any trading day, if the markets move more than 20%, they will halt them. So we also know that traders and algorithms are going to try to not do that, because a halted market is just as bad. Because when the markets open up again on the next day, you could see these big drops. And again, these market drops are not great for intraday traders. It takes a lot of their opportunity off the table, because if the market's closed for the rest of the day, there's nothing that they can do in that daily period to trade. So with the S&P 500, what constitutes recession in the S&P 500, right? It's a great question to ask. And let's see what the internet has to tell us about the anatomy of a recession. Here we go. I wonder if this it does not. I forget what page it was. Sorry guys, I'm trying to look for. There's a page here I had open. I should have just left it open, but it was the essentiality of how much does it have to drop before we call it a recession. And a drop of around 80%, I think, is what they consider depression. And then up from there, you had a recession around 30 to 40%. And then anything below that was just basically a market drop, or like a market crash. essentially. So we are looking at a very, very closely starting to dip into the early stages of a recession. Previous depressions had been around 80%. So that's roughly what that PDF said. I should have left it open instead of closing it. I will try to formulate the data that I find on a bit more effective basis. I've actually started to do that back here. I'm going to build out basically like the pitch deck version of what I've been studying every day. That way it's easier to give to you guys instead of just jumping live. I'll put a bit more process into saving that data, because there's a lot of stuff I find, I read, and then I close, and I use it for market conjecture, but it's great to have some of those quotes open so that I can clarify those points. I'll make sure I do that from now on. So these big drops in the S&P 500 are important for a few reasons, and again, I think that the market sentiment here is hitting one of those big panic buttons. So again, U.S. stocks plunged 7%. We see this in the Financial Times. We see it in other areas. NBC, I think it's the largest drop since 1997, or the last time we triggered some of these circuit breakers, I think was a long time ago. I don't know, this data isn't loading. And then again, if we go over to the VIX, which is the volatility index against the S&P 500, the last time we were this high was 2007, right at the beginning of the drop of the 2008 stock market collapse. So being able to compare this data puts us into an essential recession. So in the coming months, the data that we get around this pandemic is going to become extremely important to the way markets react going forward. We've already dropped into a very, very volatile place. So keeping a close eye on your portfolio and playing with the market moves here this is how you can make a significant amount of money by shorting the markets. Again, I do not suggest anyone do anything in specific here, but last week our videos were all about hedging against the drop of Bitcoin with your portfolio, and then if you were risky and crazy motherfuckers, that you could go out and actually leverage trade those positions too, or even just sitting in US dollars potentially, because we knew the likelihood of people liquidating assets to prepare for a potential pandemic, which might include quarantine anywhere of up to 3 to 6 months, would put most entrepreneurs on edge, which means they would be liquidating profiles to go into cash-based assets. So it was, we did see this coming. It was fairly easy to see coming. Taking the positions is kind of up to you guys. There's no, if you don't have a money manager and you're trading, managing your own portfolio, which is what we suggest everyone learn how to do here, is manage your positions so that you're not reliant on someone else to see these things coming, to be able to hedge your own positions, or to be able to try to make money off these drops. I mean, this was a once in a multi-year event where the returns are essentially astronomical, depending on how you're trading that position. And that's really what I think everyone should do. Most often I've heard other people blame other people for their mistakes. Like someone fucking owes you something. Look, nobody owes you fucking anything in life. This is up to you to take advantage and, I guess, position yourself effectively, right? The universe doesn't owe you shit. As a matter of fact, I would go so far as to say each one of us is in debt for this miracle of an experience, and giving back to our own communities and giving back and helping others, one of the best ways we can do. But nobody owes you anything. It's a very clear market sentiment. And I think the more we realize that, the easier it becomes to be an entrepreneur, because now if you want to provide something, it's you providing something to the rest of the world that brings value into your life. And if you're not providing other people value, well, then I don't know like how you would feel about the rest of your work cycle. So a big part of this, I think, that we're going to see, like one of the benefits of this traumatic growth time, is going to become a real flush out of all the shitty companies and shit ideas that we've been just letting linger on in our economy. And we need this. We need a big shake up in our system. We need people to choose different modalities in life. So all in all, in the next 5 years into the future, I'm super excited about that. For those of you that watch my post-traumatic growth video, these big drops we're seeing in the S&P 500, same with the Dow Jones right now, almost identical if you place them side by side here, S&P 500 versus the DJI. Here you go. This is on the 5 minute. This is on the 45. Okay, so both on the 45 minute. Here you can see, I'll zoom this out. Yes, okay. So here you can, actually I don't have enough data. Sorry, this is Bitcoin. Why did it not open? the Dow Jones. Okay, S&P 500. Actually, I bet you Bitcoin would fit right in this too, if you place them side by side. So again, we'll actually do that. We'll overlay the corollaries here. Let's see if I can do all three of them. Again, I'll start to do more of this ahead of time. I just like going live. It's so easy for me. But it definitely, I know I don't want to waste anyone's time. I know your guys' time, especially in these precarious moments, is extremely valuable. So I want to make sure I can bring you the data as effectively and efficiently as possible. So I will put that on top of the to-do list to make sure that anytime that I go live with these things, that I have all this data already presented for you ahead of time. Because I just don't want to waste anyone's time. So here you can see the interim highs for Bitcoin. It was a little bit more chaotic, obviously, than versus the intraday highs for the Dow Jones. We'll open all these up. Beautiful. So right now what we have is on the 45-minute, the Dow Jones, the S&P 500 in the middle, and then Bitcoin to the far right. And if I make Bitcoin a little smaller here, it'll probably come across a little clearer, and open both of these up so you can see the interim tops. Okay, so as you can see, if you look right in the center right now, I'm going to draw a top here, and the top, yeah, it's effectively right here as well for Bitcoin. So all these tops effectively came in the same. And this is the corollary response that I want to show. I probably could have actually done this a different way by overlining each one of these, but what I want to show you is that the moment each one of them started to drop, they all took those big hits. And they all started to rebound right around the same place. Bitcoin rebounded the exact same place as the Dow Jones. And this is what we always had assumed would happen, is that every asset would come under question if people started to worry about food and fucking water survival. This is the moment that I said would take Bitcoin to potentially much lower prices. We didn't want to see that. We didn't know a pandemic was coming. But the pandemic has fundamentally changed the basis. Now, until we see a resolution of that. And that's a great question. I had an email come in this morning from a friend of mine who lives somewhere in China. Shout out to them. I'll leave all of their information private for now, just until we get more confirmation. But essentially telling us that things are starting to go closer to normal than they had been before. You saw more people out on the streets than in the past few months, and that's important to see. So I think we're going to see an interim rebound here as well. I believe we've hit maximum pain for the understanding of a pandemic. Older generation realizes it's not just them, it's most likely them. Their children are going to be fine. I think we're going to see an interim increase in the price of these markets now. I think that this is we'll probably see another response in the S&P 500, maybe up to 30, let's say 316 points. I'll draw that in here, right along the last fractal in sales volume, which is around 313, maybe a bit higher, 320, depending on where the moving averages are and how much money they print. Again, all this is going to do is, in the long term, exacerbate the problems that makes Bitcoin valuable. So even though Bitcoin is corollary as an asset right now, if we do see a systemic collapse in the banking system and people need an alternative way to transfer money from point A to point B, Bitcoin's value could fucking shoot through the roof at one point. The fact that they keep printing so much is one of the things that makes Bitcoin more valuable. But in basically the anatomy of a recession here, unless you have food and water, all asset prices will go out the window because people will start to worry about survival. And that is very important to understand. We have not seen a moment like that in a very long time. In my generation, we have not experienced a bump where it was more difficult to get food. Everything was easy. If you wanted a job, you could get a job almost anywhere, right? It's might not always the case during a recession, and more importantly, that's not the case during a depression. So if we, again, I think we can overlap. We can compare these. There's another way to look at this, guys, too. It's by you can just compare symbols. I don't know why I did this didn't do this in the first place, but it would allow me to do is basically overlap one of these. So we'll go Bitcoin for the to USD on Coinbase. Here it is on the bottom. It shows up. So I'll move this one up here, and then what we'll do is we'll also add the S&P 500. And again, this is just showing that correlation that we had mentioned almost 2 weeks ago now, that it was important to keep an eye on this because a lot of people were expecting Bitcoin to be a non-correlated asset, but that doesn't make any sense. We know it is correlated. It has been correlated, and we've seen that in all of its movements throughout the market. So here we saw Bitcoin is a little bit more Bitcoin at the top here, the S&P 500 at the bottom. We see that Bitcoin is a little bit sharper and maybe a little bit more algorithmic in its moves. Like there's maybe a little bit more bot trading going on here, where the S&P 500 you can see as a clearer drop, especially with the futures. It's giving these bigger indicators. But as soon as you see these big run-ups, the other drops happen almost instantaneously. So we definitely have a corollary in market sentiments. I think that's important to be aware of, because until we see better news coming out of, I guess, this continued pandemic situation, things are going to continue to get worse in the markets. And this is a great time to pay attention, hedge your bets, and if you're a good trader, you can make a lot of money off these situations. So that's all we're going to do for today. I do feel better, obviously. That was a very long and hard, difficult cold to deal with. Keep your immune systems up, ladies and gentlemen. Drink things like chaga tea, vitamin D, take some vitamin C, stock up on your zinc. These are always good things to do. And wear a fucking mask if you're sick. You know, I think that was so stupid that people don't think masks make a difference. Like, if you seriously think masks make no difference, you're fucking retarded. I apologize for saying that. Maybe that's even a non-PC, but we don't have time for political correctness in evolving pandemics. Get your shit together, right? I think it should become commonplace after this that if you're sick, wear a fucking mask. So A, that I know you're sick, I don't want to touch you, maybe I give you a bit more room. Just don't go out. Stay in your fucking house if you're sick. The fact that we as a society have deemed it okay to go to work sick just because it only creates subtle annoyances for other people is stupid. I don't want your cold, and maybe we can quell the growth of these viruses, but just making our lives more sensible. And wearing masks do that as well. If you do have to go to work and you are sick, wear a fucking mask so you don't cough all over everyone and everything that you touch. I hope that's what we come out of this. I hope this is just a flash in the dark of a warning sign. I mean, even at 2 to 3% death rate, yeah, that's 5 times our global average. If we see that expel over the next few years, it is manageable. And again, I don't want to seem so couth about losing hundreds of millions of people potentially here, but we need to look at this more sensibly. There are things we should have been doing, knowing the potential of a global pandemic to fucking begin with, and wearing masks when you're sick should now be deemed a sign of respect for other people. If you go out and you're sick and you don't wear a mask, someone should smack you upside the fucking head, because you interrupt my week and my life noticeably so when I get sick, and I'm not a fan of it anymore. So I do at the very least hope, and I think that the traumatic growth that we get out of this is going to be a smarter, better educated, better informed, and more respectful society. I didn't mean to go off on that rant there. That's totally out of left field there for me. I'll take a look at some of your guys' thoughts and your questions. I'm really grateful for y'all joining us today. It's been I always have a hell of a time doing these videos. It's such a treat. Sorry for the few days off. Let's take a look at where everyone's at right now. Okay, I don't want gains just not to lose money. Yeah, hedge your bets with shorts. We're working on an article we're going to start doing articles on a few day basis. I really think it's important that we help educate one another during these times. Remember to give us a thumbs up if you like this content. Again, I'm just going to take a look at the last few questions and thoughts here. Bro, what is happening? I'm afraid. I'm from a South American country. Don't be afraid. Really look, there's nothing wrong with dying either, guys. That's the worst case scenario, is that you die or that your loved ones die. I think you should already be accustomed to that in normal life and understand that it's a tragedy and causal effect of life to some degree. So don't be afraid. In terms of why I think people should panic is because I think this is what the situation calls for. I think the situation calls for people to make fucking decisions that they would not normally make. It's just, it's super important. BTC shorts went up 135% in the top in the last 36 hours. Yeah, very interesting to notice. Again, we saw this coming. I think anyone that was intelligent saw this coming. Smash the like button immediately. Thank you. Krypton says, you ain't as healthy as you thought you were. No, what I did go do was I went out and partied and made out with some beautiful women at a festival of multiple thousand people, and I stayed awake till 4 or 5 in the morning every night for 3 nights. So it's not, I wasn't as healthy as I thought I was. I just put my body under a period of stress, which no one could really endure. And it was fucking worth it. So suck on that. I had a great fucking time. That's okay, but from in the future, stay well rested to get yourself some sunlight. Don't stay up till fucking 5 in the morning every night for 3 nights in a row, and I probably wouldn't have gotten sick. It just makes sense. Cool. Good rant. Needed to hear it. Thank you guys. I appreciate that. Totally agree with the mask etiquette. Yeah, I don't know why the fuck we didn't do that in the first place. We should have been doing that a long time ago. Lincoln says, cut your hair. I did cut my hair. I went for the shorter look, just, playing around with some new ideas. I hadn't cut it for 14 years. I look like a baby now. I look like a bear cub. Thank you. That's some funny shit. We're all going to die. Yeah, that's true. I think people need to recognize that fact. We will all fucking die, ladies and gentlemen. That is your contract to life at one point. So do your best to enjoy it while you're here. Be appreciative for the moments that you have with your loved ones, and make a point of trying to repay this beautiful fucking universe for the moments that we get. Yeah, panic is not bad. I think panic is rightly when it's due. Maybe 9 out of the 10 times when you jump because you heard something in the forest, it was a rabbit, not a bear. That 10th time when it's a bear and you jump and you're already on the move, it's important. Let your autonomic nervous system work for you. If it's saying you should be doing things, do those things. It helps quells the panic. I know that when I go and I stocked up on food, made me feel better. When I put 10,000 liters of water storage on my property, it made me feel better because I was quelling some of that atomic nervous system's response to the fears that I see of the black swans around me. So I think it's important to trust your nervous system. If it's telling you to do shit, fucking listen. If it's telling you to panic a little bit, do what you need to do to quell that panic by becoming more prepared, and then that panic will disappear. That's how these things work. You appreciate that your immune system is good at that. Lincoln K says, stop swearing. Nah, it's not going to work. These times deserve more poignant responses. I think people should be well educated enough to know that those who swear are smarter than those fuckers that don't. Like, there's countless evidence that says that. That means the information that's being transferred is valid. If I didn't swear, and there are shows when I don't, for sure, maybe we could assume that those times are like less volatile. In these moments right now, swearing actually helps release some of that internal stress and the internal momentum. It's noticeably so. We know that, as a matter of fact, just yelling like, it helps your nervous system deal with shit. So ignore those who tell you not to swear and not to yell or whatever. Just have your own fun with these situations. Like I said, I believe there's a large amount of potential positive that will come after this few year. If we did it, like, there's still potentials that we don't have a pandemic. But look, again, I think we need to be prepared, and that involves some level of panic. A pandemic is it's not scary, but it's something we all knew was coming, and we all knew we should have been preparing for. So if you weren't already prepared for a potential global economic supply chain or a pandemic already, well, we fucking told you so. So enjoy your day, ladies and gentlemen. Be grateful for everything you have. I love you all. We'll see you guys again soon. I will see you again shortly. This is Steel with the Arcane Bear. See you guys on the other side.